What's up guys, Tommy Bowyer here from Movie Rewind, and today I'll be counting down the scariest Doctor Who episodes. So without further ado, let's get into it. So for me personally, Doctor Who is at its very best when it's scary and creepy. I just love dark Doctor Who. I think that's why I have such a soft spot for the Peter Capaldi era. I just think darkness works very well in the world of Doctor Who. So I thought it'd be a nice idea to actually discuss some of the scariest and creepiest episodes of Doctor Who. Now, a few disclaimers before we get into this ranking. Firstly, I'm only going to be talking about the revival of Doctor Who. I have seen some classic Who, but I haven't seen enough to really give a full opinion on it. So yeah, please bear that in mind. You're not going to see any classic Who stories on here. Secondly, this is my opinion. You know, I'm very biased, as is everyone. So what I consider scary may be very different to what you consider scary. And thirdly, obviously, please feel free to comment your own opinions down below. I love reading comments from you guys. So if you think that there's a particular creepy story which I haven't included in this video, please feel free to comment down below. Now that all of those disclaimers are out of the way, let's get on with this video. Firstly, we're going back to 2005 with the iconic Ninth Doctor story, The Empty Child and the Doctor Dances. Now, this is, for many people, their first introduction to a scary Doctor Who story, and it's easy to see why. The Empty Child is an iconic Who monster. I think it's the combination of the gas mask, which shows no emotion, and the child's voice, which really does sell this scary vibes in this episode. I think the World War II setting works well. It's very creepy. I think that the Empty Child is a great villain, one of those villains which definitely sticks in your mind. I remember watching this, I think I was around 6 or 7 years old at the time, and it used to creep me out. I think the iconic line, "Are you my mummy?" works very well. I think it's always great when a villain has a catchphrase, and I think it works well in this story. This is just a very unnerving story. It's creepy, it's Doctor Who horror as its best, and it shows why Stephen Moffat is such a great writer and a very talented writer when it comes to darker Doctor Who stories, because he just knows what he's doing. He knows how to use horror to scare the viewer, and he does it really well in this two-part story. Tooth and Claw from the early David Tennant era. This is, in my opinion, a very underrated Doctor Who story, and it's also a very scary one. I remember watching this when I was about 5 years old in 2006. And I was scared. That werewolf scared me. And even to this day, I still think it's a very creepy story which a lot of people just ignore. The werewolf, even though it's a 2006 BBC TV budget, I think the effects on the werewolf hold up pretty well. I love when they're running around the castle and the werewolf is chasing them, so there's some great tension there. They really do build the werewolf up as a scary monster which needs to be defeated at all costs. And the fact that the werewolf is killing people, like, they didn't have to show that. I think if they'd just shown the werewolf hurting people, it wouldn't have been as scary. But as we see him mauling people and killing people, it does add a new layer of threat to this episode, because it's like their lives are in danger. The Doctor and Rose and the Queen Victoria, they could die at the end of this episode if they don't defeat the werewolf. So I think Tooth and Claw is a very underrated horror story. I think it just works really well set in one particular location in terms of the castle, and I think it has great chase scenes which really are, they have a lot of tension in them. Blink from the David Tennant era, series 3, obviously the introduction to the Weeping Angels. The Weeping Angels have never been better than in their first appearance in Blink, and I think that is because they don't move. You never see these angels move, and I think that's what's so creepy about them. The idea that a statue can kill you and you wouldn't even know about it. You just blink and it moves closer. That's such a basic idea, but it works so well. I think if Moffat's going to be remembered for anything when it comes to Doctor Who, I think it will be the creation of the Weeping Angels. I think that is definitely the thing which people will associate with him the most in terms of his contribution to Doctor Who. And I think the Weeping Angels, you know, as they went on, they became a bit more diluted, because obviously the more you see of something, the less it becomes scary. But in Blink, they are perfection. I think they are horror factor, and Blink is a very creepy and very unnerving episode of Doctor Who. Midnight, well, we're picking a lot of stories from the David Tennant era, but that's just because they just do such a good job of it. Russell T Davies' script for Midnight is perfection, probably the best Doctor Who story I have ever seen, and definitely Davies' best script. And I think the great thing and the scary thing about Midnight is you never really get to the bottom of what the creature is. It possesses one of the women on the tour bus, but you never really get to the bottom of what this creature is. And I think that is what's scary about it. I love the creature repeating everything which is said. That adds to a very tense and unnerving atmosphere. This is an episode where the Doctor doesn't have a companion, and that works because he hasn't got anyone sticking up for him. Everyone turns on him because he's the most intelligent one in the room. Midnight is a very unnerving episode. The tension builds throughout the episode, which works really well, and it's got a very creepy villain, which the best thing about this villain is that you don't know what it is, and that just adds to its fear factor. Now, there's not many stories in the Matt Smith era which I would say are scary, but one which really sticks out is the God Complex. Now, long-term viewers of this channel will know I'm a big fan of Toby Whitehouse. I think he's a great writer, and I love Toby Whitehouse scripts. The God Complex is definitely his best work. It's a very, once again, like Midnight, a very unnerving atmosphere. You've got this hotel where there are just rooms everywhere containing different people's biggest fears. And you've got this Minotaur which is just roaming the corridors. And it is so creepy because you're just looking around all the time thinking, when is it going to pop up next? And I think this episode plays on people's fears very well. It does make you think, well, what is my biggest fear? You know, what would be in my hotel room? So it is a very creepy episode. I think the Minotaur appears just enough to be scary, but doesn't appear on screen too much to when you do see him, it's like, oh, you know what, I've seen him too much now, the fear factor's gone. I think you see him just enough for him to remain creepy. And some of the early scenes where you don't really see the Minotaur properly, he's just sneaking up on people, they are scary. I have to admit, this has a very unnerving atmosphere, and I think it works very well. It's definitely Whitehouse's best script for Doctor Who, and one of those very creepy stories, which I don't think gets talked about for its creep factor enough. The Capaldi era definitely had some great scary stories, and one which I think has become very underrated is Listen from Series 8. Listen, much like Midnight, it's scary because you never see the creature. You never see this creature which cannot be seen. You know, it's always hiding. You know, that is its power. It's able to not be seen. And I think that's a very clever idea. It's a Stephen Moffat script which uses his best elements when it comes to writing scary Doctor Who stories. I think the scene in Danny Pink's bedroom where the creature is under the bed is a very unnerving scene. I think the tension they use works very well. And I also love the scene where the Doctor is just standing there saying, you know, we're at the end of the universe, you know, there is nothing out there, and this thing is banging on the door, and he's just like, I need to see what this thing looks like. I think it's so in the nature of the Doctor, especially the 12th Doctor, to try and see something which doesn't want to be seen. I think Listen is a very underrated Doctor Who episode when it comes for being scary. I think it's one people have forgotten about, and I would definitely, more than any other one on this list, I'd recommend rewatching Listen again because it is very creepy. It does make you feel a bit unnerved while you're watching it. And lastly, I've chosen the Series 10 episode Oxygen. Now, it was a toss-up between Oxygen or Knock Knock from Series 10 because Knock Knock, I think, is a very well done haunted house story. But for me, Oxygen, once again, it's just creepy. You know, the idea of corpses attacking people is just great. You know, I mean, I love the concept of oxygen anyway. The idea that in the future, people have to pay for oxygen in order to live. And when they run out, you know, the suits just go on automatic pilot despite having corpses in them. And I think that is why this episode is so creepy, because you can imagine this happening in the future. You know, humanity is so obsessed with money already that honestly in the far future I can see oxygen having to be bought and paid for. So I think this is an episode which is not only scary because of the corpses attacking people, but it's also scary because it feels realistic. It feels like something which could happen in the future. So thanks for watching, guys. I really do hope that you enjoyed this video. Please remember to like, comment and subscribe in order to receive great and maybe even improved quality content in the future. And as I said at the start of this video, please feel free to comment your suggestions down below. Are there any creepy stories which you feel I've missed out? I would love to hear your recommendations because, you know, that's what's good about the Doctor Who fandom. You know, the idea that we can all express our opinions in a space where there is no judgment, where there is no name calling, where there's no putting others down. You know, let's just be positive and discuss all of our opinions. I think that's the main thing that I would like to see more of in the Doctor Who fandom. So anyway, thank you for watching and I will see you in another one. See ya!